So many of us these days feel stuck in our lives. Which way do we go? Where do we turn? We want to do something new, but we don't know how. Well, I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll not only know why you get stuck, but you'll know how to get yourself unstuck.
Envision my life, believing is seeing.
Have you ever noticed that sinking sensation you get right in the pit of your stomach that appears when you look at a part of your life that you desperately want to change? Perhaps it's when you're looking at that balance in your bank account. Could be the number of the scales when you weigh yourself in the morning. Or maybe a chronic lack of confidence that stops you from speaking up when you walk into a room. You see what you think is a huge gap between where you are and where you want to be. And while it feels like you're looking up at some kind of unclimbable mountain, many of us have been deeply conditioned, especially these days, to believe that information and transformation is incredibly hard work and tough to get. The age-old story tells us that we need years of therapy, months of miserable dieting, or we need that white-knuckle approach to finally become the person we want to be. The thing is that most of us assume that if a problem is big, then the solution must be just as big. But what if that core belief is actually the main thing that's holding most of us back? What if the moment you become, say a non-smoker or a confident speaker or an achiever of wealth is instantaneous? It's only the decision to change that actually takes the time, because we might spend decades procrastinating and gathering information. But the actual neuroplastic shift, the moment the neural pathways in your brain flicker into a new pattern, well, that happens in a heartbeat. It's exactly like flipping a light switch. And you can stare at that switch on the wall for years, agonizing over it. But the moment you finally flip it, the light switch is on instantly. And it's exactly the same with neural pathways in your mind. Today, we're going to take apart the engine of the human mind. We'll explore why willpower is usually a trap and why the unconscious mind is actually trying to save you, even when it might appear to be sabotaging your success. We're going to be moving you from being a victim of your program to being the operator of your own mind. First of all, let's take a look at the trap of willpower and the power of habit. Most of us try to change through what we call sheer willpower. We force ourselves not to eat that biscuit, or we wrestle with our fear into submission. However, willpower is, it's a finite resource. Think of willpower like the battery on your mobile phone. Every time you resist a distraction or you make a hard choice, you drain that battery. And by the end of a long day, your battery is at, let's say, 5%. And that is exactly the time that you find yourself reaching for the ice cream. The bigger issue is that willpower is a conscious effort, and it simply cannot compete with the sheer volume of your internal habits. And talking about habits, here's a fascinating fact. Did you know that roughly half of everything that we do every single day is a habit? It's true. You don't have a board meeting, in your head in the morning to decide how to tie your shoelaces or which pedal on your car is the brake. It's all done on autopilot. Imagine that your unconscious mind is a supercomputer, whereas your conscious mind is, it's merely a sticky note, which is actually a good analogy. Now, the goal is not to fight the brain, but to rewrite the software so that the desired behavior becomes the new habit. And you want the healthy choice to be the one that requires zero effort, moving it from the effort pile to the autopilot pile. Let me give you a short true story. My wife Mauricio and I experienced this very thing, autopilot loop, firsthand a few years after we first met. Back then we realized that our relationship was starting to suffer somewhat because we'd fallen into a cycle of doing the same old things every single day. Boring. We were visiting the same places and following the exact same schedule, which in turn took all the spontaneity out of our lives. We spotted that we were becoming more like good friends really than a couple. And it was at that point that we decided to inject some excitement back into our world. To do that, we started going to different places. We mixed with different people, and we deliberately changed the times that we did things each day. Now, for us, it was a complete game changer. Firstly, it made us appreciate life and each other so much more. And the truth of it is, our subconscious minds had been keeping us stuck in that loop of sameness because they wanted to keep us safe, but it actually had the opposite effect on our happiness. So the question is, how do you change the software? Well, firstly, you must understand the nature of the operating system. That's the first thing. The unconscious mind is completely illogical. It's not logical at all. In fact, it's purposeful. Its primary directive is survival. It doesn't care if you're rich, if you're popular. It only cares that you're alive at the end of the day. Often the programming it uses to keep you alive is, well, let's just say it's outdated. A bit like running Windows 95 in a Windows 11 world. Perhaps you were told as a child that money is the root of all evil, or you were yelled at for being too loud in class. Well, things like that your unconscious mind holds onto and uses it as a survival program to keep you from being seen as dangerous or visible. Remember, you can't override this with willpower. It doesn't work that way. You have to go in and convince the security guard at the door that the perceived danger is no longer real. Which leads us nicely into that security guard at the door. How do we actually speak to that internal security guard? The answer is hypnosis and focused attention. Now, hypnosis is not just about making you cluck like a chicken, although I could do that. It's a state of extreme relaxed concentration. For example, did you know you've already been hypnotized by your favorite streaming services? It's true. When you're immersed in a movie, you forget the room around you. You suspend belief. For example, if a monster jumps out on the screen, your heart races and your palms sweat, even though the monster is just pixels on a flat screen. Your body produces real adrenaline because you are hypnotized by the story you're seeing. And we are constantly hypnotizing ourselves with the movies that we play in our heads. We are the directors of our own internal cinema. But instead of creating an incredible blockbuster with a happy ending, we're often shooting horror films on a loop. Let me break this down for you. Let's consider the travel brochure of your mind. If you're thinking of a trip and you design a brochure filled with photos of mosquitoes and lost luggage, you'll feel a need to stay home and not go on that trip. However, if you fill it with high-definition shots of turquoise water or the smell of salt air, you'll suddenly feel a surge of dopamine and you'll book that ticket. The reality of the island hasn't changed, but the brochure that you authored changed your biology. So, how do you go about breaking those bad habits and finding the hidden benefits? Many people wonder why they keep doing things they know are bad for them, such as smoking or overeating. This is because of the hidden benefit. Every behavior, no matter how destructive it seems, has a positive intent for the unconscious mind. Let's take smoking, for example. Smoking is a stress control mechanism. The chemicals trigger endorphins, and the act of smoking forces a deep breathing pattern that creates instant relaxation. The unconscious mind ignores the terrible risk of cancer because that could be 20 years away, while the stress is happening right here, right now. So instead of calling yourself weak or berating yourself, simply ask a better question like, what is this behavior doing for me? Once you define the need, such as comfort or avoiding judgment, then you can find a healthier way to meet it. Sometimes, however, you just need to snap the wires physically. And we can use what I like to call the donut versus the tobacco technique to rewire associations. Firstly, I'd like you to visualize. See yourself biting into a delicious, creamy iced donut. Then, as you bite down, imagine that inside that donut is a thick, crusty layer of revolting tobacco. Finally, feel the sweetness of the donut mixing with the sickening, putrid taste of the tobacco. Oh. By firing the desire neurons and the disgust neurons at exactly the same time, you short-circuit the system. You've just edited the code and changed the file tag from delicious to disgusting. And that's just one way of breaking those bad habitual habit patterns. So if you feel that you're struggling to change your life and create new habits, my wife Mauricio and I are here to help you on your transformational journey. For more information about how you can work with us, please check out the description.
Envision my